This is Happy Monkey.
This is Happy Monkey.
Happy Monkey. Happy Monkey.
This is Happy Monkey.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hello, this is Ramon.
Hi, I'm Baby.
And we just want to remind everybody to go vote. Peace.
What's going on, everybody? This week, the podcast has a sponsor, ArdentCannabis.com. They're known for the Ardent Nova, which is a decarber, but now they have a new Ardent where they decarb and infuse in the same device. So if you use our code MONKEY, MUNKEY, when you're checking out, you get $30 off your purchase. So please go on and check them out. They got a bunch of other devices. Hey, you might get lucky and find something that'll help you cook in your kitchen.
This is how we start the Happy Monkey Podcast today, and we got my man, boy. This shit crazy today. I don't know how we end up pulling this off today, ladies and gentlemen, but this is crazy right now because this is basically the Happy Monkey lifestyle, man. We pretty much between all types of lifestyles, and we bring it into cannabis some way, somehow, and I don't know how we were able to pull this gentleman at his time, because this is around election time, so I know you got to be busy, brother, so this is real crazy. Vladimir, you want to give him more details about this special person we got here in the middle today?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have a gentleman here that is the epitome of the American dream.
Woo.
He's a childhood actor star. He is a crypto guru.
What?
He is a venture capitalist, and most importantly, he is running for the presidential election
What?
as an independent candidate.
Get the
Our
fuck
brother
outta here.
from another mother, Brock Pierce, on the boulevard.
That's what's up, brother. Please reintroduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are.
We might have missed some things because there's too many to list.
Yeah, too much.
Well, I think you hit the important points. And again, my name is Brock Pierce, and I am running for president of the United States of America as an independent candidate, and I am so happy to be here. By the way, my Chinese sign born in 1980 is I'm a monkey.
Now,
This is crazy.
You gotta tell us, Brock, like, you know what I mean? You have been on so many ventures in your lifetime, and how did this one happen? And how were you able to pull it off? Because we know other people, such as Kanye, did, but they weren't able to meet the requirements before the deadline. How has this roller coaster been for you?
Well, I'd say it's a lot of having done things. You know, I've been building things out of nothing over and over again my whole life. Typically impossible things, meaning things that no one has ever done before. And when you present the idea, people are like, that's not possible. You'll never be able to do that until you do it enough times, and then just like, impossible? Isn't that spelled I'm possible? You know, and so this was an interesting one. So it started for me with just taking a look at things. You know, if you see what I see, if you feel what I feel, it's like we're doomed if we don't do something. And so I'm not the sort of person that just sits on the sidelines and like does nothing. It's like, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to try and fix this. And so I can summarize why I'm running for office in one word. And that's love. Love for this country, love for the American people at a time where so many people are making decisions out of fear, at a time where our health, our mental health is not where it needs to be. This country is divided politically, economically, racially. We got real problems environmentally, technologically, pandemically, potential conflicts with foreign nations. Like if ever there was a moment to do something different, you know, to stand up, to step up, and to, you know, be the change you wish to see in the world. It's definitely now. So I did it, and I announced that I was running for president on July 4th, on Independence Day, an auspicious day for an independent, which is also the same day that Kanye announced. That I didn't see coming, but yeah, it's been a miracle to get on ballots. You know, so I've now, as someone on the inside, I see how the system is rigged. And it is.
In what ways?
It is rigged to prevent people that are not from the two major political parties from being able to run for office. They do not want any competition. They do not want the American people to have a choice.
Oh, man, you do this new type of white boy, let me tell you. Boy, you like the new generation. I'm coming for this shit now. Like, I fuck with you. Okay.
Yeah, so just a couple of examples. So getting on the ballot, that's like a hard thing to begin with.
Right.
In the year of COVID, where you can't go door to door and get signatures and collect petitions from people, this was especially hard. I think we broke like every record in what we were able to accomplish in the period of time that we did. So I feel like we've got good things looking out for us. I'd say the universe has been conspiring for at least us to learn what we're supposed to learn through this portion of the cycle. And to be clear, I'm not just running for president right now. I'm running for the next 4 years.
Ooh,
this is just the beginning. I am just figuring out. You can't rig a system well enough to stop me from figuring out how to beat it. I'm like that gamer.
and it goes to show because from the little research I did, it shows that you figured out also that it was a similar fight against crypto in the country. And prior to this, you figured out how to make that mainstream also when there was the powers that be also against that industry. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say that was a very important stepping stone in terms of getting me comfortable taking on big battles that are that have big risks. I mean, running for president, to step into this ring, you got to be prepared to lose everything. It's the ultimate ring. It's the ultimate arena, and it is high stakes. But at a time where humanity, not just the fate of this nation, humanity is at stake. The fate of this nation and humanity are going to be determined over the course of the next decade or two maximum. So, like, if ever there was a time to get involved, if ever there was a time for that political rise,
right now,
we gotta do this. We gotta take our country back.
That's a very important word you mentioned because, it's crazy to see nowadays in society. You hear every word except that because everything is try to be put in boxes. Parties, races, religions, and that is what's most importantly humanity. Because at the end of the day, we are all connected and we all need each other. So that says a lot about your perspective on things. Now, me and Ramon are the voice of cannabis in New York City. So, that's our number one issue. So I want to know how you feel about cannabis. What do you see as like?
If you was elected tomorrow, we said fuck the elections. Tomorrow.
How could cannabis help humanity in Brock's opinion?
Oh, I mean, I am such a believer in nature. And so I'm already very clear on my position. And by the way, if anyone wants to Google or look it up, you can check out High Times. Just did a huge profile piece on me a week ago. And so that's there in High Times. Boom. And so I am public in terms of, I've said the first thing I would do my first day in office is I would pardon and expunge. That and expunge is a big deal, but pardon and expunge every person in our criminal justice system for nonviolent cannabis-related crimes. Like, I mean, whether that be a penny or a pound,
right?
It's called nonviolent cannabis. And I believe we have to legalize nature. We have to legalize cannabis, and that is important. George Washington was growing. And it's called, where did this come from? It's an oxymoron, like outlaw nature, re-legalize nature. How did we get there? It started with DuPont, I think, in 1932. They had this new thing called plastic. And their plastic couldn't compete with hemp. And so they had to lobby and outlaw it so that we got plastics instead.
I think it was the plastic, but I think it was more also the paper, like the newspaper stuff and all that shit. You know what I mean? So all that was going on.
Yeah, but I mean, this is clearly one of those things. We made a mistake. We now have the benefit of hindsight. Let's fix this.
Let's fix it.
And also, just to add to the rest of the cannabis points, I also would, at a federal level, stop the enforcement. And then I would work with Congress as well as all of our international treaties, the UN Treaty of 1966, I think in 81 or 61 and 88, excuse me, to go and get these things federally legalized. Now, I've not heard a political candidate ever actually explain the full process.
Right.
Like you can say, "Oh, I'm pro cannabis." I'm telling you,
Right. This is the
pardon
shit
and
that I'm gonna do.
expunge, stop federal enforcement, and work with Congress and address our international treaties to get it done. Like here's the roadmap. That's how you do it.
Why do you think these things will make the world a better place? What effects do you think it would have on society?
Well, I'll start with a story about my mother. And so my mother had a surgery, and she was given, pain meds, oxycodone, and they don't warn you. They don't tell you like how addictive this is going to be. You're like, oh, the doctor's giving me some pills, and I'm in pain. Yeah, next thing you know, my mother comes out and visits me, and she's like not my mother anymore. She's starting to become like the Walking Dead or the Living Dead, and I'm just like, oh wow, I'm watching like my mother's like fading away, and then all of a sudden, one of my friends like said, you need to try cannabis. Cannabis saved my mother's life. My mother is with my 1.5-year-old daughter right now, playing the greatest grandma ever. And thank you, cannabis, for making that happen. This is a plant capable of so much, whether it be hemp-related products, whether it be CBD-related products, or THC. Hemp is a great gift from God.
Whoa.
Cannabis is a gift from God.
Whoa. He said that twice, ladies and gentlemen. He said that twice. Right.
And what it does for our soil, when you've got soil that has been destroyed by bad agricultural practices, you just go plant that stuff and it heals the earth. There's so much that this is able to do, and I'm so glad that train has already left the station. 2/3 of Americans are in favor of legalization. So this trip has left this train has already left the station. What's shocking is that major political candidates are not on board with this yet. It's kind of shocking considering that the people have spoken.
60% of the country
wants
to go
this is
legal.
that old school thing, that we don't really understand what's going on.
Well, that's maybe why we need, some young blood.
We need the young blood.
Yeah, because basically, it has 25,000 uses. So many people are taking all these pharmaceuticals, making their life worse. I believe that crime would go down because people would be, much happier. They would have a natural way to medicate, and like you said, environmentally, it would change everything. So it's just like you said, it's just like the only thing that makes sense is, politics as far as like, pharmaceutical companies, people that benefited in it from not being legal, fighting against it because there's really no fight left,
Yeah, and the opioid epidemic, not just my mother, this is an opioid epidemic.
Murdering people.
Our doctors, and I don't want to criticize all doctors, but there are a lot of doctors that have essentially become drug dealers. And what we call medicine sometimes looks more like drugs, and some of those things we call drugs look more like medicine. We have a very real problem. Our kids with amphetamines all being given Adderall as children because they're gifted with the ability to multitask.
At least we know cannabis is by choice, because someone who goes and gets cannabis is by choice. The medicine that's given to you by a doctor is like, you're trusting yourself to this doctor, and they're telling you, here, take this.
And how did they pick that for you? A lot of these doctors are basically getting paid to push it on you. It's like one piece of advice: when you go see a doctor, and this is not meant to be a criticism of all doctors in medicine, by any means, but when you meet with your doctors, learn to take some responsibility, and that responsibility is to ask questions, to push back. What's the issue? Where does it come from? Why?
Right.
Don't just blindly take whatever it is that they give you, and you'll find out pretty quickly what kind of doctor you have. If that doctor is there and trying to help you understand your issues and where it's come from and what your options are, that's someone that probably is deserving of more trust. If they're just like, take these pills, and then, nope, wait, take these new pills.
Right.
Hey, here's some more pills. Just stop and ask yourself, because something might be wrong.
All right. So before we get into the whole, we already know, we established you're a brilliant person. You've done all these things. You're a super entrepreneur, obviously, right? But this is the Happy Monkey Show. Let's get a little bit into Happy Monkey business, right, ladies and gentlemen? So let's talk a little bit about little Brock. Yup, back in the days, Brock, maybe some high school Brock or something like that, right?
How was Brock a Hollywood star at such a young age? How about that?
Well, so I grew up in Minnesota, and through whatever set of circumstances, I found myself as an actor at the age of 3. And so I grew up, I didn't choose to be an actor, I just was. And like a lot of kids from Minnesota, I grew up playing hockey. And so when Disney came to town to film the first Mighty Ducks movie, I was a shoo-in, right? I was the only kid with acting experience that knew how to play hockey. And so I booked my first movie at 10, playing Gordon.
That was my shit. I love Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, I played Gordon Bombay, the main character, Emilio Estevez, but in all the flashbacks. I open up the movie, you know, the opening shot, missing the shot, hitting the post. By the way, if it hadn't been written in the script that way, I would have made the shot. I usually do. But, so yeah, made my first movie, then made on making a bunch more movies, came out to California, continued making movies. But the one that's most relevant to what I'm doing now is I starred in this movie called First Kid, where I played the son of the President of the United States of America, with Sinbad as my Secret Service agent. Bill Clinton and Sonny Bono had cameos. I got to spend some actual time in the Oval Office at 14. And it's a very interesting image when you start thinking about the fact that I played the first kid when I was 14 and I'm now, you know, running for president when I'm 40.
You manifested this.
Wait,
Incredible.
so still, I still want to know about a little bit of younger Brock, because this is what we're here for, right? So maybe not the star, but maybe the human being, right? So can you please give us a glimpse of your first experience of the love affair of cannabis? I know you've had your first joint or your edible somewhere there in Minnesota, somewhere back in country.
Yeah, well, so when I was 15 years old, I was living in an apartment complex in Burbank, California, Los Angeles. My next door neighbors, the guys that moved in, were all of the Bone Thugs and Mo Thugs crew. And so I spent every day basically hanging out with these guys because they were my neighbors, literally every door in my halls.
Right. It was just already in the hallways.
And Eazy-E's widow, was like their manager. She was always like, "What are you doing? He's not 18 years old. He can't." They're like, "Come on, the first kid was Sinbad. He's fine."
Right.
And so I grew up hanging out with that crowd.
Right.
So I mean,
that must have been fun.
If you're hanging out every day with the whole Mo Thug crew,
the Bone Thugs, you ain't going nowhere.
There's no question that the puff and pass is like, you know.
Yeah, it was just there. I ain't even mad at that.
And I basically
that's
grew up
an
with
awesome
blunts.
experience. Yeah, that's an awesome experience.
And then the next place, like a year later, that I lived is this place called Oakwood Apartments, where I started and I went back to. And then the Wu-Tang Clan moved out to record.
Oh, come on.
And so then ODB, I'm like 16 years old. ODB would come over to, like, you know, our house at night, you know, when there was.
Oh, man.
Because we were reliable.
Your life is a movie.
That's crazy. That was literally like every kid's hip hop dream right there. Like you just said it. Boom. You went from one group that smoked 1,000 to another group who smoked 1,000. That's crazy.
Oh, and on this note, then there was also Loonies. You know, I got
come
five on it.
Come on. That's crazy.
Warren G back then. It was like, it was a kid's dream.
It was, that was crazy, man.
And keep in mind, Wu-Tang was, you know, East Coast.
Yes.
Bone Thugs and Mo Thugs was Cleveland, but they came out to LA to record, and they just happened to move into my apartment complex every time.
That's a crazy place to be living. Now, talking about living, Brock, right? You have an interesting residence right now that you call Puerto Rico. Me and Ramon are Dominican, so that's close to home for us because we're Latinx. They are neighbors, and we have a lot of similarities in our culture.
Yeah.
Why, out of all the places you could live at in the world, why Puerto Rico?
So there's three parts of it. One is I started visiting Puerto Rico as a teenager, fell in love with it. So, you know, Puerto Rico is that, like, probably the least appreciated part of the United States. You know, a lot of Americans still don't even know it's part of the United States.
Right.
I mean, I even when I go through immigration, sometimes our immigration department, they go, "Where's your final destination, Puerto Rico?" And they don't realize it's part of the United States. Not all the time, but that has happened. And so actually, and then I've even had people coming to visit that end up in Costa Rica, you know, because Puerto Costa, you know, people confuse it. It's surprising, and very smart people. But I started a bank in Puerto Rico in 2014 because in cryptocurrency, we needed a bank that would bank the Bitcoin companies.
Okay.
And it was a systemic risk to the industry. And so I was looking at how do I buy a bank? How do I create a credit union? What do I do? How does this work?
Right.
And as I was studying it was going to cost too much and take too long. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a back door. I'm like a hacker. And I'm like, what is the way to... Whoa, what about the territories? The U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam, Samoa. And then I went and figured out that I could do that in Puerto Rico. They passed some new legislation in 2012, so went and did that. Now Puerto Rico's like really on the radar for me. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I really started to articulate, philosophically, like, why am I here on earth? And I would give speeches about, like, what is our role? And so I grew up as a pro gamer, basically, and I view life kind of like a game, the game of life. And a lot of people are in search of, like, more money, more power, whatever. I decided to go into the options menu of life and choose my own adventure. And so I measure my success in life not by what I have, but by what I give. I measure my success in life by the positive impact I have in the world. And so as someone going out and sharing this message all over the world, I started to run experiments to see how I could be helpful and will people follow me. And then I decided that, yes, I need to go move to a part of the United States that could benefit greatly from that. And Puerto Rico was the obvious place, because I knew it. And I figured I could do some big things there that would actually make a big impact. And so when Hurricane Maria hit, it wasn't the best time for me, but I'm like, well, this is the time, right?
Right, and you're there.
And so I moved down to Puerto Rico right in the middle of that longest blackout in U.S. history, figuring out what I could do, helping to fix roofs and everything, basically went down on that mission. And then I've stayed there doing a bunch of things that I've kind of like said, these are all the things I'd like to accomplish while I'm there. I'd like to move the needle around food security. So the Dominican Republic is a net exporter of food. Puerto Rico imports 85% of their food. Almost identical climates, 4 growing seasons, water. So what is the difference? Why is the DR so good at this, but Puerto Rico's not? And so, looking at food security and trying to see what we can do to make a big impact there. Energy cost down in the Caribbean is extraordinarily high.
Crazy, yeah.
And you've got tremendous amounts of sunlight. So how do we migrate towards renewable energy, and how do you help move that ball forward? How do you bring entrepreneurship and innovation to the island? What are sort of some of those philanthropic objectives? How do you move, because Puerto Rico suffered from a brain drain. Puerto Rico keeps, its main export is Puerto Rican people. Right. The ones coming out of university, or those that, were trying to build a business and just realize it's hard, and that, you can move to New York, you can move to Florida.
And make something happen. Yeah.
And so Puerto Rico, keeps losing, a lot of their best and their brightest. I mean, there were 3.5 million people there before Maria, then it went down to 3 million. Those 500,000 people that left are not just, they're the people with the means to leave. And so if you keep, the brain drain keeps draining, this is a huge issue. So how do you reverse that? How do you get some of the diaspora to come home? Yeah. How do you bring intellectual capital, human capital, financial capital, spiritual capital to the island? And so this is what I spend my time working on, is addressing all of these issues to the best of my ability.
Well, we got a good one, because now we living in 2020 in Puerto Rico. We looking super legal over there. Medically, at least. I went last year, and I walked into a dispensary, and they got flour. So we pushed that issue. That'll bring a lot of money back, because that'll bring a lot of tourism back. That'll bring a lot of money back to the island. You know what I mean?
Yeah, please come down and visit me. We'll we'll spend a little time in Puerto Rico. I'll pop over to the DR with you. I'm down to plan a trip.
Yeah, man, we love Puerto Rico.
Nah, we definitely do. Now, me and Ramon come from humble beginnings, and where we used to source our information from was the barbershop. We always say, that's where you find all the good tea, all the good information. So I heard in the barbershop that you coined and patented one of the crypto tokens that is used for gaming. Is that something?
Yeah, well, so I did a lot of games. So I started out as an actor. And then at 16, because I didn't choose to be an actor, I was like,
right, it was just something that
I
was thrown at you.
I just was.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden I'm like, is this what I want to be doing in life? No, I want to write my own script. I want to be the director of my own life. I want to be entrepreneurial. And so at 16, I decided that technology was going to change the world. And so I went to my management and I said, I'm going to quit acting. They're like, what?
They looked at you like, are you crazy, kid?
People would do anything to be in your situation. You're being offered starring roles in movies. What do you mean quit? I go, yeah, I'm going to do that. And they're like, but for what? What are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to become a technology and internet entrepreneur. They're like, what? What are your qualifications? You didn't go to school for that. That's impossible. You'll never succeed. And I said, well, I'm going to try anyway. Right. And so I went off and started building my first businesses in media, because that was the thing that I knew. And then when I turned 20, I went into games. I recognized that virtual worlds were going to be a big deal and virtual currency in these things. And so I became the main market maker in the world for things like World of Warcraft Gold and Second Life, built a supply chain of hundreds of thousands of people that played video games as a profession to mine digital currencies that I sold all over the world. I was PayPal's largest merchant for years, launched Alipay in China, did $10+ billion of business. This was my 20s. And we were testing economic theory. So if you want to test economic ideas, it's really hard to do that in the real world because the stakes are so big. If you make a mistake, you could cause a lot of harm. But in these virtual countries, you know, the worst thing that happens is that server fails and you spin up another instance. And so a lot of professors were getting tenured working with us back in my 20s. And then it was like, okay, now that we've done all of this, we've learned all of this, can we take these same ideas and can they be applied to the analog or the default world? And that's what we've been doing with cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. And so I'm like a doula for creation. So I don't really do operations much anymore. I show up, you know, make sure that whatever is intending to be born is birthed. And then I run off to, you know, help with the next thing. And I've been doing that over and over and over again.
Keep it righteous.
Yeah. And then, yeah, try to you know, remind people it's about the intention, like how we're showing up. Why are we doing this? We don't do things just because we can. We do things because we should, because we've asked the why. Why are we doing this? What is our intention? What do we hope to achieve?
No, I'm in firm agreement with you there because I'm a firm believer that intention is everything and character is destiny. And just from a little bit of interaction we've had, I can see that that's why you're successful because, you know, you have good intention and you have great character. And that brings me to my next question. So we all know right now 2020 has been a year that's going to be like marked in history. Me and Ramon always say like we compare it to like in if it was like in the Bible, like, you know, when you have AD, BC, like 2020 is going to be like pre-COVID, post-COVID. So my question to you is, due to what's happened in COVID, due to the atrocities that have happened to people like Breonna Taylor, you know, George Floyd, what do you think from pre-COVID to post-2020, how will things change, and what do you see like things like crypto, cannabis, and how do you see society changing in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, so it's the year 2020. You know, that makes me think of vision. You know, I like to think of this decade as the visionary 20s, but I'm more hopeful than that, kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes. I like to think of these as the soaring 20s, you know, where something new is being born.
Shit has happened.
But the process of birthing is, you know, a painful undertaking, and it can be messy. And so that's what I believe is happening here. And I think your analogy of, you know, BC AD kind of thing is not far off. I think this is the beginning of some very, very major changes. I think it's like we're entering an age of truth. We're entering into an age of transparency. And old systems that are no longer serving us are going to fail, and new things that are ultimately serving and bringing us together is what we need. I mean, this is, it's going to be a painful process, but this is, you know, ultimately what is going to help us like transcend and build a world that ultimately works. This is this one's for all the marbles.
This one's for all the marbles.
Yes, and it's the 11th hour. You know, the hourglass, runs thin.
In what ways do you think, like, if you were to win, you could fix these systemic problems that, you know, have people of color being abused by police and murdered and innocent people dying and being persecuted?
Yeah, so let's talk about how we heal as a nation with all the racial division, right? Obviously, reform is needed around law enforcement. You know, we're supposed to be the land of the free, yet we have more people in prison, both in total and per capita, than any other country in the world. You know, I'm an advocate for liberty, and something is wrong here. And that means, yes, ending the war on drugs, nonviolent crimes, all sorts of things. We should be measuring our success by our liberty. And so there's a lot of things that need to happen there at a police and prison reform. Get rid of for-profit prisons. You know, profit should not be a motive. You know, that's a perverse incentive to lock people up. You know,
yeah, a lot of people getting money off that.
And the war on drugs. locking people up for harming no one but themselves, that's not the answer. It's not a criminal justice issue. This is a mental health and a social issue. But let's take the big step back to the, you know, the total racial issue that exists in this country. I don't know what the answer is in terms of how we solve this in the long run, but I know how it starts. It starts with truth. It starts with taking responsibility. So when I make a mistake, you know, I have to own it. I have to say, I did this. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Right? And so the problem we have is we have history or his story as it's been written by the victors. And what we've been taught is a lie. We have not acknowledged the past. So it starts with acknowledging the wrongdoing, starting with the Native Americans, right? Down in Puerto Rico, the Taínos, right? Christopher Columbus, it's where it all starts. What we did with the Africans and bringing them without their consent. And we have to go through all of this history, starting with the doctrine of discovery. And we got to like actually get to the root of the problem, acknowledge it, take responsibility, because until we've acknowledged things, it's really hard for anyone to heal. And once we've gone through the process of acknowledgement, then we need to all take a seat at the table, everyone represented in the present, and talk about where we go from here. But I think acknowledging and the truth, you know, and the truth hurts. You know, there's 500 treaties made with the Native Americans that are nation violated. But it has to be
addressed in order to get
That's the first step in the process.
Walk around like we don't know it happened, like we didn't know, like shit. No, the shit happened.
Yeah, and there's a lot we can't change it, but we can start by owning it, taking responsibility, acknowledging it, and from there, that's how the healing can start.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, the next question is, how do you feel that blockchain post-2020 can help humanity and the world? Because I'm not as familiar as you, but I do know that, you know, people are tired of the whole Wall Street and the world banks and all these kind of things. How do you feel this would help humanity and help the world and society flow better?
Yeah, so I'll give a couple of real world examples, and then I'll move to the philosophical. There's 55 million people in the United States that are unbanked. 55 million people. If you looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and remade it for today, having a computer or a phone, a device, an internet connection, and financial tools would be essential to the pursuit of happiness. And so financial inclusion, and call it philosophically inclusion in general, bringing greater transparency to the world, bringing greater efficiency to the world, bringing greater accountability to the world, bringing greater governance to the world, creating immutable records where no one has the power to edit the past, where like reality is reality and it is written as such, it is written and no one has the power to change it. You know, these are the things that have allowed a lot of atrocities in the world to occur. And so it has an ability to like break all the chains. It is a very, very powerful tool for truth. A tool that can bring greater integrity in the world. You know, inclusivity. I mean, it's all, you know, I'm giving you the philosophical.
Yeah. Right.
At its core, it's actually quite simple. It's just a slow, expensive database. But it's got some very unique characteristics that allow us to do things that we've never been able to do before. You know, information can't be two places at once. So the internet of information becomes the internet of everything. But we had to solve this one problem to be able to do all of these things. And now with that, we can bring transparency, and with that at the same time, still preserve privacy. You know, it's how do we design things? And it's important to note technology is amoral. Technology is neither good or bad. It is a tool. Our intention or how we use it will determine the impact it has on our lives. And so that's another reason why we need visionary leadership in our government with the foresight to be able to navigate the challenging road ahead with their finger on the pulse. When we watch our tech leaders testify before our elected officials, the quality of the questions being asked, I mean, it's embarrassing. And when you understand how big a role technology is going to play on our future, it's horrifying.
So are you saying that this will kind of like give the regular family, the family, some sort of level playing field now? They can get in the game now.
I believe the answer is yes, and we're still early in this technology's development. We need more people dreaming, and we need more people building. With this technology, remember, the future is going to happen to you, or the future is going to happen with you. And so I invite all of you to be part of the co-creation, the designing of the future United States of America that we all want to live in, the future of the world that we want to live in. Mm-hmm. But it starts with dreaming. Makes me want to think of The Greatest Showman. It's about 1 million dreams. Let's create a unified vision. So one of the problems that I bring up, and no one's been able to answer this, I'm like, what is America's 5-year plan? What is America's 25-year plan? And no one has ever been able to answer that question. No one. The problem is, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a destination for this nation, right? If you don't have an aim, you're going to wander aimlessly. You're going to run around in circles. And that's what's been happening, which is why it feels a little bit like a downward spiral. We need a unified vision as a nation. That is what will bring us back together again. That's what happened in this country after the Great Depression. That's what happened in this country after World War I and II. And so these challenges that we've been experiencing in this wild, crazy, unpredictable year likely will create an opportunity again for us to come together as a people around a unified vision or dream for our collective future.
Oh, that's well said. I definitely agree with that, because it's like you said, there's no turnkey answer to anything, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Which brings me to my next question, which I believe is one of the biggest issues in the country. It also ties into cannabis, but much deeper and bigger than that. One of the biggest issues we have in this country is health care. Nobody has access to it. You don't have really a choice, like we said earlier, of what you get to take as far as medicine. Mm-hmm. So my question is, how would Brock reform the healthcare system in the U.S. to make it fair and accessible to everybody?
Yeah, so there's short-term and long-term. Healthcare is not working. It's not working. Businesses are not providing it, and government hasn't really been able to do it. It's not working, which means we need to do something different. So in the immediate term, one problem is you pay about $3,000 for health insurance here. In Texas, you pay about $150. And so one of the first things is allowing interstate competition to occur. When you just look at those two things, boom, you start fixing a lot of problems just by allowing that. Number two is government and business so far have failed. And businesses providing health insurance is something that came out of World War II. They've had enough time, about 75 years, and it doesn't work. I think the government has to step in when systems are not working, and the government has to provide it. But I think the government is very inefficient at providing services, so meaning the government just should pay for it. I like the single payer model in the short term, the idea that everyone in this country gets a voucher, and then from there, you pick your healthcare provider. You pick it. Allow private markets to create efficiency, drive down price, increase quality by making it a competitive environment, but the government pays for the whole thing. I think that every person in this country has to have access to some form of health care. Then from there, if you want to, work really hard and make some more money and buy whatever higher end health care you can, but we have to have a baseline of everyone in this country having access to health care. And I feel strongly about that. And I think that those are the ways that you do it in the short term.
No, definitely, because, it's ridiculous that, we're supposed to be the most modern, richest country in the world. Nobody has access to health care, one of the worst, health-wise, one of the worst countries in the world. And, you have other countries that have it figured out, and we're so far away from that. So it's good to hear somebody that has a progressive outlook on it.
And you make an interesting point, and one that I point out often. We're the wealthiest nation in the world. We don't have a resource problem. We have a resource allocation problem, an efficiency problem, accountability problem, administrative problem, wrong incentive models, wrong ways to measure. We have a bunch of problems, but it's not a lack of resources. So we can do this.
Yeah, we could. We got it.
We have to. We're seeing real, things are starting to come off apart at the seams. When people feel desperate, when their back is up against the wall. You know, people do crazy things. You know, when people don't feel like their voices are being heard, when they're not being acknowledged, or they're, you know, fighting to survive. You know, we have to do this. Technology is going to replace tens of millions of jobs. And we have to figure out, and we should be measuring our success as a nation, not by how our most successful people are living, but how the bottom of society is living. You know, that's how we should be measuring our success.
That brings me to my next point that I was going to ask you right now. That right now I was looking at a show last night. I think it was Bill Maher, and the numbers state that right now, when you really break it down, part-time jobs, everything, unemployment is at 26%. I think it's going to be a long haul to get it back to where it needs to be. What is your perspective on that, and how do we start? Like you said, I know there's no turnkey answer, but start getting, like you said, like, because they always use the Wall Street numbers, the Dow Jones, but that does not count, that 26%. So how do we make sure that the wealth gets spread and actually makes it to these people?
Yeah, so because of technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, and these things continuing to change the landscape of work. And this is not just service level jobs. It's lawyers, accountants, stockbrokers, surgeons. There's 3.5 million truck drivers in the United States. Then you start thinking about all the Uber, Lyft, and taxi. Driverless cars are here. This isn't some science fiction stuff 10 or 20 years from now.
Teslas are driving themselves now.
Yeah, this is crazy.
I'm not sure we're ever going to get it back to where it was in the way that it is. I mean, so I live to work. I live to serve. I'm passionate. I wake up every morning jumping out of bed, grateful for the opportunity to do something important, something that makes me proud, right? Something that I feel like I'm living my purpose. A lot of people work to live. A lot of people work to survive, many of whom are doing things they don't want to do, doing things they don't enjoy. And so technology replacing jobs is not a bad thing, especially if it's replacing jobs that people don't want to do. That's a very good thing, conceivably, as long as we build the right systems. And so I believe in this idea of universal earned income. I don't use the word basic. Earned, I think, is an important distinction. But we have to basically create an environment, design a system that makes sure that everyone's most basic needs are met, that no one is going hungry in this country, that everyone has access to shelter that wants it, and everyone has access to health care if needed. And so we have to do that. And if we do that correctly, as people are going through this, losing or having their jobs replaced, the ones they don't want, they get to take a step back and they get to take a deep breath and ask themselves what they're passionate about. What do they want to do? And if we manage technology correctly, if we design these systems correctly, we could end up with a renaissance in this country where people are just coming up with creative jobs, tapping into that creative space, doing something they love. And then we'll get away from this endless pursuit of growth and money and power, and instead start realizing that real wealth is our health, and to be able to do something that you love and you're passionate about. It doesn't matter how well you get paid as long as you can survive, because you're going to love every minute of it. And I think if we manage things correctly, this could end up being, an incredible thing, but it has to be managed correctly. You have to have the visionary leadership that understands this, because the alternative, might be something more akin to Terminator. By the way, it is kind of that serious. Yeah. We can't be managing technology through the rear view mirror 10 to 20 years after things have happened. You can't just put the cat back in the bag. I mean, look at how social networking is impacting our democratic process. Check out that movie, The Social Dilemma, on Netflix.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
We have to be on top of this stuff. It's a big deal.
It is.
1,000%.
Wow, this is crazy. This is a crazy one, ladies and gentlemen. I know y'all never seen this one, man. This was right here. Shit.
Listen, you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, you know, Happy Monkey's the voice of New York City cannabis, and cannabis flows into every part of life. And this man right here has a lot of progressive ideas, so we felt, me and Ramon, that it was only right for you guys to hear what the alternatives you have out here than just the same old basic stuff that we've been hearing forever. Another thing that I wanted to ask you was that I think that a lot of the big issues that come when it comes to legislation and judicial stuff is that we have these, you know, these bills and these, you know what I mean, all these things that were written 150 years ago, 140 years ago, and they don't get revised. And this is not 1858, you know what I mean? So how are we using these, you know, bills, these different laws that were made back then that don't apply to all the progressive things that are happening in society? I think that makes it hard to change and for people really to adapt to the new way of life, and for people to make laws and for people to do things at a 2020 level. What do you think about that, Brock?
Yeah, so I equate, you know, the way the government runs and how it legislates to them. Imagine if you had a hemp farm, all right?
Yeah, that's a great
cannabis farm.
example.
And imagine if you were just planting seeds and 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 planting seeds, but never have you ever, like, pruned, harvested, pulled out weeds. That's effectively what our government has been doing. Is it's just been building a system that is overgrown and never really been tended to. We have a bunch of things that don't make sense anymore, and there's also this thing called the law of unintended consequences. We're not even measuring to see if the thing that we were intending to do is working, and so we have a system that needs to basically be cleaned up. You know, it needs to make sense, like common sense. Like, just take the tax code, for example. Clearly, our tax system is not fair or working. I think everyone can agree with that, most everyone anyway, and in the sense that it's not fair. And so there's not a single person on the planet that knows the tax code, not even close. So if there's not a single person on earth that has made this their life's mission and their business, and the best of the best of the best of them, the greatest professor or lawyer in the world, right, tax accountant, not one of them knows the tax code. Doesn't that mean it's overgrown? Don't you think that system has become a little overly complex if no one on earth knows it? And there's this other thing, you know, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So if no one could possibly understand the law, how can we all be held accountable to it? That doesn't sound fair to me. It doesn't sound like it makes sense. And if you call up the IRS and you ask them for advice, you know, as you're trying to do your tax returns, half the time they're going to advise you to do something illegal because they don't even know it. So I'd say that that's time to, like, take a step back. We have to double click on things and say, you know, like buying a house. Do you knock it down and build from scratch, you know, or do you remodel it? And so we have to be evaluating everything like blank canvas, remodel, sort of like, what do we do? What do we do? And some of the, and it's back to common sense. Things should be simple, common sense, fair, and make dollars and cents, right?
Keep it simple, man. Keep it simple. Sometimes that's what we say. We talk about it all the time.
That kiss analogy.
Yeah,
keep it simple, stupid.
You know
I think that this country needs a lot of that, because I'm 37 years old and I've been hearing for 37 years trickle down economics, and I never seen a drop come all the way down to the bottom.
By the way, that is a really important note. In terms of, there is a lesson in that, which is real, not the economics you've been hearing from that perspective, but as the American dream, right, is struggling, you know, in this period where all these mom and pops and small businesses are dying. Yeah. What can we do to fix our economy? And I don't mean at a government level. I mean, what can you do?
Right, locally.
What you can do is to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because that keeps that money in your neighborhood versus that money flying away. And so when you buy local, you are supporting your community, you know, your village, your state, your country. And that's one of the things that we can do to keep the American dream alive, to keep the American dream on a path where you can yet again thrive. It is important that we're mindful of that. And it's worth even stating a little more. Every time we transact, we are giving power to something. And so it's important that we are mindful and conscious of the things that we are buying, the things that we are giving power to and to make sure that we are giving power to those things that we believe in and want to support. And, that's where it's good to ask, where did this come from? It was made where? Where did this food come from? How was that animal raised? As we become more conscientious and mindful of the things that we do and understanding what we're transacting, what we're empowering, what we're consuming, that's a very empowering thing. And, as we mindfully make our decisions, we can mindfully create, a better world that we can all live in.
I really respect your mind, and I feel like you're a modern-day Renaissance man, and I'm really interested to hear your answer to my next question. We ask every guest that comes on here if, whatever you know about us, like,
because we understand, you just met everything, and you're just beginning to see the movement, and the fact that, we know you're not crazy, and you got a team, so of course you check this out, so this is not a crazy situation, but, we value your time, and thank you for coming here and basically, coming to talk to us. But if you want to finish the $1 million question.
So the $1 million question is, Brock, if you had to describe Happy Monkey, the movement, everything we represent as a company and as a movement in one word, what would it be and why?
In one word. Bliss.
Bliss. Why bliss?
Joy.
Brock.
It's happiness is to some degree a choice, right? A key to being happy is being in the present, right? Being in the present moment. The present is just that. It's a gift. And, how we respond to things, do you have expectations or not? When you get rid of your expectations and when you're in the present, you're happy. And, for me, Monkey is also, maintaining that childlike innocence, that willingness to be playful and to have fun, because we can do good things and have a good time doing it. It is not meant to be, this miserable sacrifice. Let's have fun and save the world.
Boom. I like that.
Man, thank you for the kind words, Brock.
That was dope. I appreciate that very much so. Bliss, we'll take that because nobody ever said
Nobody's ever used that. We've had a lot of guests. So Brock, tell the people how they can follow up. How can they find out where to find everything going on with Brock Pierce? What should they expect for the future with him and all the amazing things you have going on?
So you can follow me on, pretty much every social platform. And I believe we're leaving this broadcast age, an age where media is here to talk down to you and tell you what to do and what to think. And I believe we're entering a new age, a collaborative age, a participatory age. And so I invite you, and I'm happy and hope to hear from you and to respond to you as much as possible, because I think that's important. We're in this together. And you can learn more by visiting my website, which is www.brock.vote, brock.vote. And, I think it's, and again, I'd like to remind everybody that this is just the beginning. I will be running in 2024, and I'm looking for, this is not just about me, I'm looking for 100 candidates that want to get into office because they care, that operate with integrity, honesty, values, principles. It's a virtue thing. You don't have to agree with me on platform and policy. I'm looking to get people elected into office free from the control of political parties, where you are able to directly represent the constituents that elected you and put you there. And so a big part of what our job here in life is to act according to our conscience, to do what we think is right. And so the main thing I'd like to remind everyone to do is it's an incredible privilege that we have this right to vote. I encourage everybody to use that right, to exercise that right. Your voice does matter. Your vote does count. And to vote your conscience, not to be making decisions or acting out of fear. Fear less, love more.
Boom. Everybody, fear less, love more.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Today, Brock has dropped so many jewels on you.
You used to be a rapper, Brock, back in the days or something, man. You dropping jewels, bars, all sorts of shit.
But most importantly, what Brock said is, we're days away from the election. use your right is more important than ever. I voted for the first time this year. So please exercise your vote, because we need change, and it can't happen without you.
Yes, sir.
We know that it's been a very stressful year,
Yes, it has.
but always remember, you're too blessed to be stressed. Things that get greater later. For now, checking out Vlad, Brock, Ramon. Till the next episode. Peace, love, and happiness.
Yeah, peace, love, and happiness, life, liberty.
What's good, everybody? This is your nigga Ralph, trying to keep you fresh with the info from Happy Monkey every single podcast. You already know what it is. If you haven't followed us yet, follow us on Instagram at happymonkey_ or Happy Monkey Goodies. Now remember, that's monkey with a U. Also, if you haven't checked us out, we're on YouTube. So check out our channel, Happy Monkey TV. Keep us current, live, and everything with the culture.